Imagine trying to plan like a $15,000 international trip. You need to book the flights, reserve hotel rooms, get your transportation sorted, and coordinate this highly specific daily itinerary.
Right, which is stressful enough on its own.
Exactly. But here is the catch. You can't actually finalize any of your bookings until, well, a microscopic group of cells in a petri dish tells you it's time.
Yeah, that's the reality.
Oh, and by the way, the entire future of your family basically depends on this trip going perfectly. So, welcome to the incredibly high stakes, just intensely logistical reality of international fertility travel.
It really is a massive undertaking.
It is. And for you listening right now, I mean, if you or someone you love has navigated the journey to parenthood, you know it's not like treating a sprained ankle or like a sinus infection. It's this profound, emotionally taxing thing.
Oh, absolutely. The emotional weight is staggering.
Yeah. And when your local clinics don't have the answers, the decisions get monumentally more complicated. Okay, let's unpack this. Our mission today is to take a deep dive into the booming world of crossing borders for reproductive care.
Which is growing so incredibly fast right now.
Right. And today we are zeroing in on a destination that has quietly become this massive global hub for it, which is Cyprus. We're going to break down, the mechanics of IVF, the biological realities of egg donation, the honestly highly complex legal web of gender selection, and how patients are using platforms like PlacidWay.com to make sense of it all.
Because doing it alone is almost impossible.
Yeah, because trying to do this completely by yourself, it's essentially like trying to navigate a labyrinth in the dark while carrying something incredibly fragile.
That's just the perfect way to visualize the pressure patients are under. You have the fragility of human hope colliding directly with the sheer logistical complexity of international law and, well, reproductive medicine.
It's a lot.
It's so much. And if we connect this to the bigger picture, the globalization of this specific healthcare sector is fundamentally shifting how families are built. I mean, it isn't just a matter of hopping on a plane for a cheaper medical procedure.
Right, the bargain hunting myth.
Exactly. That is a pervasive myth we really need to dispel right away. What we're really talking about here is access. It's access to highly advanced laboratory environments, specialized donor programs, and specific genetic treatments that might be, heavily restricted or, frankly, completely inaccessible in a patient's home country.
So why Cyprus, though? I mean, it's a gorgeous Mediterranean island, sure, but it is transformed into this total epicenter for fertility treatments. Like, patients are flying in from the US, the UK, all across Europe and the Middle East.
Yeah, the volume of international patients there is huge.
Now, I have to play the skeptic for a second here, because when people hear the phrase medical tourism, the cynical part of the brain immediately assumes people are just trying to save a few bucks on healthcare, right? Like maybe bundling an embryo transfer with a nice beach vacation. Is this really just about medical tourism to save a few bucks? Or are patients being driven abroad because their home countries are basically restricting their family building options?
Well, the financial aspect is part of the equation, certainly. But it is overwhelmingly the latter. And let's be very clear about this. Choosing fertility care based entirely on a discount price is incredibly dangerous.
Because of the quality of care.
Exactly. You are dealing with delicate cellular material and complex genetics. Patients travel to Cyprus primarily for the advanced laboratory services, the favorable legal frameworks, and drastically shorter wait times.
Wait times. That has to be a huge factor, right? Because biological clocks, they do not pause just because you're sitting on a clinic's wait list.
Precisely.
Yeah.
In many Western countries, accessing donor eggs can take years, like literally years. Yeah. Local laws often dictate that egg donation must be entirely altruistic.
Meaning they can't be paid.
Right, meaning donors cannot be financially compensated for their time, the medical risk, and the physical discomfort. And naturally, that severely shrinks the available donor pool. But in Cyprus, the regulatory framework allows for compensated, robust donor programs.
Okay, that makes sense.
So a patient who might literally age out of viable fertility while waiting for a local donor can access top-tier treatment in Cyprus in like a matter of months.
Okay, so it's much less about booking a cheap vacation and far more about just outrunning a biological stopwatch.
That's exactly it.
But when we look at the actual treatments patients are receiving once they land, I mean, the terminology is a complete alphabet soup. We hear IVF, ICSI, PGT. Let's actually decode the mechanics of these treatments, starting with the baseline, which is standard IVF or in vitro fertilization.
A good place to start.
Essentially, this is about bypassing the fallopian tubes entirely, right?
Exactly. Normally, fertilization happens inside the fallopian tube. But with IVF, you bypass the internal reproductive tract altogether. A patient undergoes weeks of carefully timed hormone injections.
To make more eggs, right?
Right, to stimulate the ovaries to produce multiple mature eggs at once, rather than the usual single egg they'd produce in a natural cycle. Those eggs are then surgically retrieved, taken to a lab, and introduced to sperm. By controlling the environment externally, embryologists can monitor and facilitate fertilization in real time.
Here's where it gets really interesting, though. Standard IVF is kind of like throwing a mingling party in a petri dish. You put the egg and the sperm in the same environment, turn down the lights, and just sort of hope they hit it off and do their thing.
I love that comparison.
Right. But then you have a procedure called ICSI intracytoplasmic sperm injection. If standard IVF is a mingling party, ICSI is more like a highly targeted VIP escort service for a single sperm.
That is a brilliant analogy, really. And it perfectly illustrates why personalized medicine is strictly required here. I mean, ICSI isn't just a premium menu upgrade you select for fun.
Like getting the leather seats in a car.
Right. No, it's a mechanical solution to a very specific biological problem, usually severe male factor infertility.
Meaning the sperm aren't cooperating at the mingling party.
Exactly. If a patient has a low sperm count or poor morphology, which means the sperm are misshapen, or poor motility.
Oh, meaning they can't swim well.
Right, meaning they literally cannot swim with enough force to naturally penetrate the tough outer shell of the egg. If you just use standard IVF in that scenario, it will likely result in 0 embryos. So with ICSI, the embryologist uses microscopic tools to physically select one single, healthy-looking sperm, immobilize it, and inject it directly into the cytoplasm of the egg.
Wow. So you are manually forcing the introduction that completely changes the odds of fertilization.
It absolutely does.
And speaking of changing the odds, egg donation is a massive part of the Cyprus ecosystem. Like we said earlier, this is critical for patients dealing with diminished ovarian reserve or advanced maternal age. But Cyprus has a very strict medically assisted reproduction law, the MAR law, that mandates egg donors must be between the ages of 18 and 35.
Yes, that's a heavily enforced regulation.
And I get that younger is generally considered better for fertility, but mechanically, why is that age cap so rigidly enforced? Like, what is actually happening to an egg after age 35?
It really comes down to cellular mechanics, specifically these structures called spindle fibers.
Spindle fibers.
Yeah, think of spindle fibers as the microscopic scaffolding inside a cell. When a cell divides, this scaffolding physically pulls the chromosomes apart to distribute them evenly. Now, in a woman's 20s, that cellular scaffolding is strong and flexible. The eggs divide properly, retaining the correct number of chromosomes.
But as the eggs age in the ovaries, the scaffolding gets brittle.
Exactly. As a woman reaches her late 30s and into her 40s, those spindle fibers degrade. When an older egg attempts to mature and divide, the chromosomes often do not separate cleanly.
Oh, wow.
Yeah, it's a phenomenon called chromosomal non-disjunction. It leads to embryos with either too many or too few chromosomes, which is the primary cause of implantation failure, miscarriage, or genetic disorders.
That makes total sense.
So by legally capping the donor age at 35, the Cypriot government ensures a high baseline of cellular integrity, which drastically improves the chances of a healthy live birth.
That completely clarifies it. So it's not an arbitrary ageist rule. It is entirely about the physical structural integrity of the cell division.
Exactly. It's purely biological.
But obviously using a younger donor doesn't automatically solve everything. It's still human tissue, which means patients have to ask the uncomfortable but really vital questions, like how exactly are these 18 to 35-year-olds medically screened? Are they genetically tested for silent carrier conditions like cystic fibrosis?
Yes, and crucially, what are the consent and privacy laws governing the donation? Like, are these donations strictly anonymous forever? Or is there a legal mechanism for the resulting child to access their genetic origin story when they turn 18?
Right, the ethical side of it.
And practically, what happens to the unused frozen embryos created from this donor tissue? A reputable clinic will not evade these questions. They will have transparent, legally binding answers ready.
Which sets up the next major hurdle. Let's say you've successfully created embryos. You've got them safely growing in a lab incubator. Now you face the most technologically advanced and arguably the most legally complex decision of the entire journey. Pre-implantation genetic testing, or PGT.
Oh, this is a huge topic.
Especially how it's used for gender selection.
Right. PGT is just a remarkable piece of technology. Once an embryo reaches the blastocyst stage, which is usually around day 5 of development, An embryologist will carefully biopsy a few cells.
Just to be clear here, they are taking cells from the outer layer, right? Like the part that eventually becomes the placenta. They aren't actually cutting into the inner mass of cells that becomes the fetus.
Correct. It's a biopsy of the trophectoderm. Those few cells are then sent to a specialized genetics lab where they count the chromosomes. They can identify the sex chromosomes, XX for female or XY for male, and they also screen for aneuploidy, which is that incorrect number of chromosomes we discussed earlier.
So people use this for two totally different reasons. The first is strictly medical. Say a family carries a severe genetic disease that only affects male children, like certain types of muscular dystrophy or hemophilia. They can use PGT to select female embryos and completely halt the transmission of that devastating disease in their family line.
Which is an incredible medical advancement.
It is. It's undeniably powerful. But the second reason is family balancing. This is simply wanting a boy because you already have 3 girls at home. Now, I have to admit, I was incredibly confused trying to figure out the rules on this.
It is notoriously confusing.
Because if you look up clinics in Cyprus, some emphatically state that family balancing is strictly banned. Meanwhile, other clinics are practically buying digital billboards advertising their gender selection packages. Wait, if the rules are this contradictory depending on which source or clinic website you look at, how is a patient supposed to know what is actually legal?
This raises an important question, and it is perhaps the most critical warning we can issue during this deep dive. The legal landscape regarding gender selection requires parsing out the political geography of Cyprus itself.
Oh, because the island is split.
Exactly. The island is divided. You have the Republic of Cyprus in the south, which is an EU member state, and adheres to strict European directives banning sex selection for non-medical reasons. But then you have North Cyprus, which operates under a completely different, historically more permissive regulatory framework regarding reproductive medicine.
So the law literally changes depending on which side of the island your taxi drops you off at.
Precisely. And this highlights the extreme danger of basic internet research. A patient must never, ever assume a procedure is legally protected or available just because a slick clinic website says it is.
Because the website might not even mention which jurisdiction they fall under.
Right. The regulatory environment can shift rapidly, too. If you are pursuing PGT for family balancing, you have to verify the current laws with independent legal professionals, not just the clinic sales representative. And it is vital to remember the biological reality here. PGT is an analytical tool.
It just reads what's there.
Exactly. It does not conjure your desired result out of thin air. You might biopsy 6 beautiful embryos and discover that none of them are the gender you hoped for, or that the one embryo of the desired gender is chromosomally abnormal and cannot be safely transferred.
Wow. So you could spend thousands of dollars, fly across the globe, endure weeks of daily hormone injections, and still end up with absolutely nothing to transfer.
That happens more often than people think.
That is heavy. It makes the actual execution of this journey incredibly daunting. I mean, there is a defined 10-step patient journey for doing this, from initial research and shortlisting clinics to submitting medical records to the actual travel and treatment phase.
But the timeline is totally out of your hands.
Right. As you mentioned earlier, the timing isn't up to you. Planning this fertility travel is like trying to organize a destination wedding. But the date is dictated entirely by your estrogen levels and the millimeter thickness of your uterine lining.
That is a brutally accurate analogy. You are trying to synchronize international flight paths and hotel bookings with follicular development. During the stimulation phase, a patient needs frequent ultrasounds to measure the growing follicles.
To see if the eggs are ready.
Yes. And if the eggs are maturing faster than expected, the retrieval surgery gets moved up. You cannot simply delay an egg retrieval by 48 hours because your connection in Frankfurt got canceled.
Oh, wow.
The biological window is unforgiving. Once the trigger shot is administered, you have roughly 36 hours before those eggs release.
Which makes patients incredibly vulnerable to bad actors, honestly. Because if you are panicking about timing and desperate for a successful outcome, you might ignore massive red flags.
Oh, the desperation can definitely blind people.
Let's unpack those red flags. The most glaring one has to be any clinic promising a 100% success rate or offering a guaranteed pregnancy.
Absolutely. If you see the word guarantee attached to a live birth, you need to walk out the door immediately. Human biology simply does not allow for a 100% guarantee in reproductive medicine.
There are just too many variables.
Way too many. Even with a euploid, which means perfectly normal embryo transferred into an optimal uterus, the mechanism of implantation is still partly a medical mystery. Another subtle but massive red flag is a lack of age-stratified success data.
Oh, meaning the clinic lumps everyone's statistics together.
Exactly. A clinic might aggressively market a 75% success rate. But if you look closely, that statistic might only apply to 25-year-old patients utilizing donor eggs. If you are a 43-year-old patient attempting to use your own eggs, your statistical reality is entirely different.
So it's misleading.
Presenting that 75% number as a blanket expectation is dangerously misleading.
And then there are the hidden fees. You get a quote that looks amazingly affordable, so you book the flights. But then you arrive, and suddenly you're handed separate, unexpected bills. You know, you're being charged extra for the anesthesia during the retrieval, the ICSI procedure, the PGT lab biopsy fees, and the yearly embryo freezing costs. Suddenly, your bargain treatment is bankrupting you.
Which is exactly why patients must demand a comprehensive, itemized quote before they ever commit to a cycle. What exactly are you paying for? Because making a decision based on incomplete financial information only compounds the immense emotional strain of the process.
It's just adding insult to injury.
The stress of IVF is profound enough. Compounding it with unexpected financial trauma can be devastating.
The emotional toll really is the undercurrent of everything we're discussing today. You are managing a heavy cocktail of hormones, international logistics, murky legal zones, and massive financial investments, all while carrying the deep, often silent emotional weight of infertility.
It's a heavy burden to bear.
It requires serious psychological resilience, partner support, and stress management. And this is exactly where platforms designed to assist patients, like PlacidWay.com, come into the picture. So what does this all mean? How does a platform actually mitigate this chaos?
What's fascinating here is the necessary evolution of modern medical travel. Decades ago, it was a very isolated endeavor. You found a clinic and a directory, booked a flight, and hoped for the best.
Just cross your fingers.
Yeah. But today, platforms like PlacidWay act as comprehensive patient support networks. To be abundantly clear, they do not provide medical diagnoses, and they do not guarantee clinical outcome.
Right, they aren't doctors.
Exactly. Their primary function is patient empowerment through organization and transparency.
Right, because you don't know what you don't know. If you've never gone through IVF, you wouldn't intuitively know to ask a foreign clinic about their embryo freezing protocols or hidden anesthesia fees. PlacidWay basically gives you a centralized command center.
That's a great way to put it.
You can compare these clinics side by side, read about their accreditations, request transparent line item quotes, and figure out what questions you actually need to be asking the doctors.
Exactly. A responsible, compassionate fertility plan addresses the whole person, not just the biological treatment cycle. Utilizing an organized comparison tool ensures you are thoroughly vetting a clinic's follow-up care policies.
Like what happens when you get home.
Right. Who do you call if you experience bleeding 2 weeks after you fly home? What emotional support systems are in place? By answering these questions before you board a plane, the power dynamic shifts. You are no longer a passive tourist wandering into a foreign clinic hoping to be taken care of. You are an educated, empowered patient making highly strategic decisions about your medical care.
It takes a process that feels terrifyingly chaotic and injects some much-needed clarity and control. Okay, let's wrap this up. We've explored how Cyprus offers some incredibly advanced options for IVF, egg donation, and genetic testing. But the clear takeaway from our deep dive today is that success and protecting your physical and emotional health requires relentless research.
You really can't cut corners.
You have to approach this with a firm grasp of the biological mechanisms, realistic expectations about the outcomes, and a clear understanding of the complex legal landscape.
Absolutely. You must verify the data, ask the hard, uncomfortable questions, and rely on transparent, comparative information rather than marketing promises.
And if you are listening to this right now, standing at the beginning of this path and wondering how to even take that first step without feeling completely overwhelmed, visiting PlacidWay.com is a great place to start. It is a tool built specifically to help you compare international clinics, request those vital quotes, and connect with global healthcare providers with a lot more confidence.
As we conclude our deep dive, I'd like to leave you with a broader thought to explore on your own. As geographical borders become increasingly irrelevant for accessing advanced reproductive technology, we have to ask ourselves, how will this rapid globalization of fertility redefine our very concepts of family, citizenship, and medical autonomy in the decades to come?
Wow. That is a massive question, and it really highlights that this isn't just about medicine, it's about the future of human connection and how we define life itself. It's a lot to process as you navigate that complex maze, but hopefully, armed with the right knowledge and the right tools, that fragile hope you're carrying makes it safely to the light.